I just did.
Okay, well, I want to welcome everybody to the second part of this celebration of the International Communal Studies 40th anniversary. I'm Steve Lloyd Moffett, and I am a professor of comparative religion at California Polytechnic State University in San Luis Obispo. And most recently, I am a researcher in communities for the Department of Built Environment at Aalborg University in Copenhagen, where my wife Amy and I will be moving in exactly a month from today. So, this part two of our celebration is about looking forward. Part one, we had a couple of days ago, we had a wonderful retrospective of the origins of ICSA and going through some of the different conferences that have happened over the past 40 years. Today, we're going to look forward and talk about our most recent history and then the future of communities and the future of ICSA and its role in that process. And in many ways, we're gonna tell a story about this unique organization where practitioners and scholars come together. And in many ways, I'll just quickly give my origin story with ICSA because it fits into that model and embodies so much of what ICSA had started. So back in 2012, I was contemplating starting a community. I was a scholar, I still am a scholar of early monasticism. So I had an ancient religious communities focus to my work. But I was thinking of starting a community that my wife and I would eventually start in a couple of years later. But I had read some articles by Bill Metcalf, and I was in Australia on sabbatical. And so I said, I'll just pop up to Brisbane and see Bill. And we had a wonderful conversation as Bill has been so generous to so many young scholars along the way. And one particular memorable moment in it was towards the end. I said, Bill, can you just sort of summarize this kernel of wisdom? What makes these communities successful? If you're going to start one of these things, and Bill sort of leaned back in his chair and said, Steve, what you need is a really strong guru at the start to make all the decisions. And then you need the guru to die just at the right time in its history. And I've never forgotten that moment with Bill. And so we went on to start the community, and which is still operating in California. But then I also went on to study communities and to make that the focus of my academic work, which continues now as Amy and I move to Denmark. And this origin story for me is so emblematic of the ICSA story and so many people on the webinar today. Because for each one of us, we had an interest in community, probably personally, probably academically, and those came together in this unique organization that is the International Communal Studies Association. And so our plan today is we're going to look at first some of the most recent conferences because I think when you look back at this sort of moment in ICSA's history, we're at a point of just complete evolution as we evolve into the next stage. And then I'm going to ask Tasia to convene a panel of younger communal studies folks who are here today to talk about the future of community and ICSA's role in that. So let's start off by talking about the most recent evolution of ICSA. Now, as historians will always say, talking about the recent past is a fool's errand, but I think we can look back and see that there were several evolutions that happened in our last couple of conferences. And let me share my screen here. There we go. And we will, beginning. There we go. Let's go back. Um, And so we're actually going to start off by talking about our Hudson Valley Conference. And Dan McCannon was the chair at that moment, the organizer on that conference. And I think Dan's had a few words to be able to talk about how that conference differed from others.
Excellent. Steve, could you stop sharing so that I can put up my pictures? Great. Uh, uh, okay, so in 2019, ICSA was hosted in the state of New York in the United States by not one, but four closely related communities. Camp Hill Village Copake, Camp Hill Triform, Camp Hill Hudson, which doesn't have a sign here, and Camp Hill Ghent. And many thanks to Deborah Altus for the pictures that we're viewing. So all of these communities are part of the Camp Hill Network, which is an international movement of about a little bit more than 120 intentional communities supporting people with and without intellectual disabilities. These people build community together, often but not always in agrarian settings, inspired by the spiritual ideals of Rudolf Steiner's anthroposophy.
Dan, can I please ask you to put it on full screen?
Thank you.
Thank
sorry.
you. There it goes.
There we go. Thank you for that reminder. So being at these places opened up several new themes for ICSA. First, this was the first serious engagement that we've had with issues of disability and particularly of disability-centered communities. Camp Hills are by no means the only intentional communities in the world that center the experience of people with disabilities. Camp Hill is part of the larger phenomenon known as anthroposophical social therapy. And there is another entirely separate network of similar communities called the L'Arche movement. And being at Camp Hill gave us an opportunity to experiment with what it means to create an academic conference that is fully open to people of diverse abilities. And that meant that we really had to center a lot of active and cultural programming to keep everybody at the gathering involved. And we did see quite a lot of participation in the conference by people who lived in the four communities who were able to find things that connected with their own experience. The fact that we were at four different communities simultaneously also gave us a chance to explore some of the themes that are very important to those of us who've been inspired by the work of Donald Pitzer and the idea of developmental communalism, the ways in which communal movements change and evolve over time. So we saw in the four host communities four different stages of Camp Hill evolution. Camp Hill Copake is a traditional, what's called a village in the Camp Hill movement, a place where adults with and without disabilities are building their lives together and doing a lot of agricultural work. Triform and Hudson represent two distinct impulses that both arose in the 1970s. Triform being a kind of essentially a college for people with intellectual disabilities where they get to experiment with life away from the family circle. And Hudson is what's called an urban community rather than a farming setting. It's located in a vital urban neighborhood in the small city of Hudson, where its members can participate very actively in the life of the community, in part by running a cafe. And finally, Camp Hill Ghent represents one of the newest aspects of Camp Hill life, and also a newer aspect of intentional community more broadly, one that's been studied extensively by Deborah Altus, and that is communities that center the experiences of older adults. So Ghent is built around the life of elders, both elders with intellectual disabilities, elders who are themselves non-disabled co-workers in Camp Hill communities, and just other older people who appreciate the cultural life of a Camp Hill. The third thing that Camp Hill brought to us that was new was a deep partnership with another conference, a conference that was specific to the Camp Hill movement. At the time, before the pandemic, the Camp Hill Research Network was holding annual conferences in the United States. And basically, we had our two conferences overlap partly and also run distinctly to some extent. And that really increased our participation. So we had well over 300 people passing in and out of the four communities during the time of the conference and made a lot of really great connections. We also had a fabulous tour that brought us to three, maybe four, depending on how you count, very different sorts of communities. We went up the mountain to the Bruderhof Platte Clove community in a former police camp. That's where every pacifist community likes to be. Former police camp in the Catskill Mountains. Reconnected with many Bruderhof members who've been connected to ICSA for a very long time. We crossed into Massachusetts to visit Gould Farm, which is another sort of therapeutic community supporting people with mental illness. And finally, we went to the Abode of the Message, which was a Sufi community built on the site of one of the most important of the Shaker communities in the United States, the New Lebanon Shaker Village. So we got to see what Josh Lockyer has called progressive utopianism, the way one group of communards builds their vision on the inspiration of those who came before. Folks, do I have time to show some pictures from the pre and post conference tours in Denmark? I've got a thumbs up from Steve. So here's two more of Deborah's pictures from Camp Hill, New York. An image of the bright colors of both the craft work and the fine dining at Camp Hill. Okay, in Denmark, we had a really amazing tour before the conference and another really amazing tour after the conference. I only was able to participate in half of the post-conference tour, so I don't have pictures for all of them. But this picture is from Grobund, a really interesting community that centers teaching people how to build their own small houses. So they have a huge warehouse where people were building houses. And we got to see a lot of those. You see Manolo there in the center, several others that you may recognize. Here is, Betsy Morris's partner, spacing on his name. Anybody want to help me? Rains, thank you. Checking out the outdoor building classes. And then you can see some of the kinds of houses that were being created there at Grobund. And here's just a little bit of the festival atmosphere of the training course they were running. Here we are, I believe, at Freeland, the community that Grobund grew out of. You get a typical community map. And we were very impressed by this sky-high solar panel. A little mix of the do-it-yourself and the high-tech there at Freeland. Here, I think we may be at Hjortshøj, but I'm not quite sure. But you see a good mix of those of us who were there at in Denmark. Here we are at Herta. Herta were our hosts. Herta is a very interesting community that blends elements of Camp Hill and elements of co-housing. So there's a disability-centered community at the center, and then people who just want to have some access to the cultural life of the community live at the periphery. Our hosts had created this truly amazing spiral garden, and also were able to introduce us to their goats. And the International Tractor Studies Conference had a small sub-gathering here, comparing tractoring notes across multiple continents. We had a klezmer performance at Hertha. And here, we're on to the post-conference tour. We're at Svanholm. As all good hippies want to be aristocrats, these hippies had bought an aristocratic estate, and we were able to enjoy all the different things they created around it. There we are there's Paz, who just joined us. Hello, Paz. And Anton in the fancy ballroom of the aristocratic hippie estate. And there is our beloved Jan. I think that might be Anna as well. And hello. Manolo again. And yeah, so that's a little bit of that tour.
Yeah, that's great, and it's a good bridge because Dan was one of the leaders of both of those things, and our fierce leader at the time. And then I think I'll invite Saleh, if you're up for it, to say a couple of words more about sort of the evolution that had happened as we stepped into the virtual world, tiptoed into the virtual world, or threw ourselves in the pond of the virtual world for our Skanderborg conference. So, Saleh.
Yes, thank you, Steve. Yes, yeah, I guess we experimented with this hybrid technology or hybrid way of holding conferences at Skanderborg at Audonicon. So with Audonicon, it was Jan and me that were supposed to be the local organizing committee from the board to try to get things started. But it was the COVID time, and we were having closures and lockdowns and so on. So we were hoping to try to travel, but never managed to do it prior to the conference. So we were very dependent on the help of Ole Ugerby from one of the communities. Do you remember, Jan? Yeah, I think it's Herta, maybe. So they did an amazing job in finding us. Yes, okay, yes, great. Yeah, so they did an amazing job of finding what is it called, venues that could accommodate us, finding us young people that were helping us with the technical side of things, making sure the streaming went okay, the presentations went okay. And Dan did a fantastic job of writing detailed steps on when we are facilitating Zoom sessions and changing being chairs both virtually and physically and so on. So it was a very steep learning curve, but I think we did it in a great way. So there were no hiccups as far as I can remember. So it was quite interesting and notable that we did this conference in Denmark, the origin of co-housing movement and folk high schools, and Dan showed us some of the pictures. The topic was co-creating community and evolving models of intentional community. I remember having some initial results from research that was conducted by the FIC being presented to us about how communities survived the COVID era and how communities also had to go through tensions and conflicts, but at the same time they provided spaces where people could maintain community and not feel isolated as others that were living in cities and other tightly populated spaces were experiencing. So that was a great insight into how communities can also help us become resilient in times of pandemics. Yeah, so it was a very site of inspiring research, cultural experiences, bonding and connection. So yeah, so that's what makes us very resilient also as scholarly communities.
That's great. Thanks for sharing, Amsala. And that was a joy to be a part of that with you. Um, we then, after jumping in the pool of the virtual world, we decided to sort of live there for a little bit. And I think it's an interesting evolution of ICSA because we had been mostly every 3 years gathering together for one big hoopla. And then we decided to start the virtual digital conference on Zoom halfway through the cycle. And Anton gave an amazing summary of this conference and all the processes 2 days ago. So I won't repeat it. I'll just mention a couple of elements that I found fascinating as one of the co-organizers of this virtual digital conference. The first was, in order, we'd always been the International Communal Studies Association, but we inevitably, because of the laws of geography, had to pick a spot to have a conference. And that conference was not always accessible to everybody from around the world, just because of travel costs and environmental concerns. And so this allowed people from all over the world to come to join us. And we had, I think in the end, 190 separate logins from all over. And this was great, but we could not overcome we could overcome the borders virtually, but we couldn't overcome the time zone. So we had 3 separate days where we highlighted different regions so that it was the middle of their day. It did mean some very early mornings. I remember chairing a session at 3 a.m. California time, and some different times. And I felt great sympathy for Bill, who often is at 3 a.m. during these times. But it really allowed us.
Steve, we can't hear you, it seems.
Sounds like we lost the connection.
Yeah.
Highlights. And these were.
We're back.
Oh, was I
Yeah,
gone
there
there?
was a short
Pause.
cut.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so first was overcoming the time zones. The second was we had some author highlights, which highlighted some recent work in communal studies. And those were a really interesting shift because it really reminded so many of us of our academic roles as distributing some of the latest research on communal studies. And the success of this conference led us to our foray into more regular webinars and teaching opportunities. And so I'm going to ask Beatrice to take the lead on this and share a little bit about that process of the webinars.
All right, everyone. Hello, I'm Beatrice Arruda, and you may call me Bia. I'm a researcher from Brazil, currently doing my PhD in civil engineering at Unicamp, University of Campinas. And in this moment, I am a visiting researcher at the ICSA, the Institute of Lisbon in Portugal. And my work focuses on sustainable intentional communities, especially eco-villages, how they create alternative ways of living, learning, and taking care of each other and the planet. And in the past years, I've been observing how they have been managing solid waste and wastewater through the lens of the circular economy, the zero waste philosophy within the communities and also in the continental gatherings the eco-village networks organize. And beyond the academic work, I'm also active in eco-village networks like Casa Latina, which connects Latin American communities to the global eco-village network. And I've been involved in organizing spaces for collective learning some of them are these webinars we'll talk about right now. And I'm really happy to be part of this ICSA community where research and lived experience can meet and where we are learning how to move forward together. So, as we can see here in the slide, I've had the great pleasure of helping organize this webinar series since 2024, alongside an amazing team of contributors and speakers, many of them here today. And this initiative was born out of on the momentum of the 2024 online conference, and also because we had this simple but meaningful intention to keep the ICSA community connected, active, and also intellectually nourished between the conferences. So it's a warm-up for this moment we are right now, and also for next year in-person conference in Germany. And also to open the doors to people who might not yet know the richness of communal studies, right? So ICSA has been offering this series of webinars since September 2024, when we had the first entitled Intentional Communities and Social Change. And it was facilitated by Thaisa Matos and featured presentations from Bill Metcalf, Iris Kunz, and Ian Martin Deng. And each of them brought a different perspective to the conversation. Bill reflected on the meaning of intentional community and defined what a better life could look like, considering the history, the politics, the utopian thinking. Iris discussed intentional communities as transformative social innovations, and with a lot of practical and academic research. And Ian offered a historical view of the social impact of various communities, from the Essenes to the monasteries, overnight experiment, the kibbutz, the Camp Hill, a little bit of everything. So together, they helped us understand how intentional communities have shaped society in the past and how they continue to offer relevant responses to ecological, economical, and social challenges we are facing today. And the second webinar, which was in February, we focused on community resilience, and we featured a special guest, Anna Kovasna, from the Global Eco-Village Network. And she presented her insights from a multi-year research project on how the eco-villages have been responding to climate change and systemic crisis through local and community-led strategies. And this session was also hosted by Thaisa Matos, but was opened by Iris Kunz. And after Anna's talk, we had a round of questions from many of ICSA members, including myself, Ian, Bill. And then we opened the space also for a broader audience interaction. And it was rich conversation about resilience, not only as a technical or environmental concept, right? But as a cultural, relational process. And that was very interesting. And it has everything to do with the topic that was discussed in the third webinar, which was governance and dynamics of communal living. And it was on May, the beginning of May, curated by Iris, and we had two excellent speakers. We had a guest from outside the association, Diana Leaf Christian, who's an author, and she's known for her work on sociocracy and intentional community governance. And also Stephen Lloyd Moffat, or Steve, we already know him, who brought his perspective from religious and cultural studies, of course, and also from a personal experience, linking then spirituality, community decision-making, and also the challenges of being in the middle of this with his family. And they have explored different models like consensus, sociocracy, deeper social dynamics that influence how the communities organize themselves. So it was also a valuable and very engaging session with lots of practical insights. So to sum up, what has made these webinars truly special to me, in my point of view, is just not the content, which was really interesting, but also the relational quality they managed to foster. The people stayed on the call a little bit after the end, you know, and they sent follow-up emails, right, Ian? Asked questions, made comments, and also how to get involved. Others return to speak like Aries did, or even to organize. Oh, it would be really nice and handy to have more people engaged in their organization, because as Steve mentioned the last meeting that we had, it's so much fun, you know, to connect like this and create something together for us, and to open up to someone else that can be interested in joining, you know. But beyond these connections, they are also a testing ground for what kinds of things that we can build within ICSA, within the association, because we can make visible strengths, such as our diversity of knowledge, of communities that we have been working with and joining, and not only meeting in the in-person conferences, but maybe engaging online too. But also our gaps, what needs. We have challenges in language, accessibility, youth participation. We are going to discuss that really soon. So I'm looking forward for that. And I believe this webinar series can continue to grow as the space of experimentation and collaboration, and everyone here is welcome to contribute with ideas and your sharing your knowledge through this communication. So we can also support maybe early career researchers, underrepresented voices, connect different regions. I mean, there are so many opportunities in this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on how we can take this further. So thank you.
Thank you, Beatrice. You're always a dose of sunshine and an excitement to be with as part of our organizing committee. I will talk more about Liebesgarten, which is our next in-person conference in 2026. We'll talk more about it at the end, but this is going to be a fascinating joint conference again with at a eco village in Germany, started in 1986. So we will be there for their 40th year anniversary at a former munitions factory in Germany. So we'll talk more at the end and encourage you to get involved in the planning and the and in submitting papers. But first I want to say that after we sort of have come out of Skanderborg and our virtual conference and our webinars, one team member that has just been central to this all is Anton Marks. And so we have had just the wonderful joy of having Anton steer the ship from Israel, and his newsletters have taken the old process and raised up the excellence of them, and really become an essential part of studying community and feeling connected throughout this whole time. And so I want to invite Anton to talk a little bit about the most recent evolution of ICSA before we throw it to Tasia and start our panel.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think it was Tim that mentioned it a couple of days ago in the first celebratory webinar, that he's amazed that ICSA is continuing and is still going in its 40th year. And I think what makes an organization continue is recognizing that it needs to be relevant and continue to be relevant, and it needs to recognize that it can't just keep on going through the same motions, the same things that it's always been doing, and recognize that the reality in the world is changing and that we also need to change with it. And I think what we realized coming up to the Skanderborg conference in Denmark was that a lot of people either couldn't get to Denmark or didn't want to increase their carbon footprint by traveling there, and therefore we created this a hybrid conference where people could join from all over the world, and it was a huge breakthrough. It was a huge challenge, but I think we succeeded in creating a platform for people to meet and to converse and to network and to share ideas both in person and online. And I think we took that one step further when we said, hold on a minute, the conferences, we've always done conferences every 3 years. It's a long time between conferences for us to meet each other, also because we quite like each other and like to see each other. But also as an organization, it's important that we continue our activities and continue the important work of connecting researchers and connecting people together. And we came up with this crazy plan to do this virtual conference, which I think was a huge undertaking for most of us on the organizing team. Hadn't done anything really like that before. It also enabled us to connect to people from the Global South, which up until then, ICSA hadn't really been able to be too accessible for in terms of doing our in-person conferences. So yeah, when Steve talks about the different time zones, it really was a huge challenge. And then the next step is the webinars, and we're putting the three things together: the hybrid, the virtual conference, and the webinars. It means that we're evolving. After 40 years as an organization, we're still managing to be leading the way, I think, in creating this platform to talk about intentional communities and for researchers to share their research. And the plan is to continue. I'm assuming as we get closer to the end of 2027, beginning of 2028, in between the in-person conferences, we'll be going again with a virtual conference. And Beatrice just mentioned the webinars in the autumn. Hopefully we'll have a whole new series of webinars, which enables us to be in contact all the year round and not just every 3 years. And we're having fun doing it. I think that's also something that's important, that hopefully shows that the people that are involved step up, help each other, back each other up. And generally we run these things pretty smoothly. We've had some good feedback. So it gives me confidence that whatever we take on as an organization, we can succeed and make it good and accessible to as many people as possible.
Wonderful. Thanks, Anton. You've been so central to this evolution. So it's great to hear your take on it. And
Thanks.
We are an ever evolving organization that changes both technologically and dealing with the world, which is our next topic. So I'll throw it over to Tasia to have the opportunity to convene this sort of panel of discussion, but we'll also have time for everybody to offer their thoughts on the future of community and the role of ICSA in it. So Tasia, go ahead.
Thank you, Steve and all. I'll just come back to the circle just a sec, because I want to see all of you better now on a gallery. The idea now, as we have some minutes, I would like to invite all of you, in fact, to think about the future of ICSA. How do you see ICSA in the future? Any insights about the future of communities studies, about communities? And yeah, we are here during this week celebrating our 40th anniversary, but also planning ahead. So I will start inviting some of our very active members to share their insights, but please feel free to also bring ideas to the chat. If you have insights, ideas, it's all very welcome. And I hope to have time to open up the circle so we can all share together. So how do you see ICSA in the future? Any insights on the future of communal studies? Maybe I will start with Iris, that has been quiet until now. Are you there, Iris? I can't. Yes.
Mm,
Can you hear?
yeah, hello
Uh-huh.
together. Can you hear me? I still hope
Yes.
my camera can function for some sort.
Oh,
Yes.
now we can hear you and see you. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you all together. So nice to see you. So I really think that this going more online since the last conference that Anton, explained and talked about very, positively, and I totally agree. So that this is definitely something that we need to do more in ICSA, so that we have exchange more on a more easy kind of level and between the conferences, and also to get younger researchers in here. So these are the two things that I really find important, and the webinars are a wonderful tool for that. And yeah, I think it's good to have some formats for exchange, also in a communal way, like community communication. Taisa, you are an expert in this. And then also formats for young researchers where they can share their works. And also, of course, the ones who have done a lot of research too, that they also, present their work. And so we are in dialogue, and we can further develop the community studies, which is the name of ICSA.
Thank you, Iris. Thank you so much. And I would like to invite Amy, that has also been super quiet, to share your insights on the future of ICSA.
Hi. Yes,
Welcome.
hopefully you can hear me. Okay, thank you, Teza. Yeah, so I would say that it seems clear that we're living in this period of global instability or insecurity, which our next conference topic is going to focus on. And we're seeing this growing distrust in democratic institutions and also in each other. And I think intentional communities can help improve our trust of each other by bringing us into closer proximity, and then also increase trust in democratic processes in institutions, and perhaps introduce strategies for making democratic processes more successful, by allowing people to practice that democratic decision making on a small scale within their community, at least within those communities that practice democracy in their governance model. And so I'd say there likely won't be enough intentional communities to actually reform the state of our world directly, but researchers through ICSA may be able to study the examples of these communities and maybe draw lessons from them that could then be applied in other settings. So going forward, I'm hopeful that communities can serve as a model of interconnection and cooperation that may help kind of guide us through this current difficult moment.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much. Yeah, I feel this is for sure part of our next steps, and somehow it's already happening. Like, I envision more collaborations, and ICSA is in touch with Gen Research, with FIC, and other universities, scholars, community members that are inspired to work together and to make it more accessible and fun for everyone to be in communities, study communities, and so on. And maybe I'll just invite you, Jan. I would love to hear your insights.
I don't know whether I have any great insights, but I have a few thoughts and ideas. And it occurred to me while I was listening to this that we have gone from the old classical conference where we get together in a room and share our ideas, and then we hybrided that and we invited people in on TV screens to come and share things. And then we went totally digital with that conference a year and a half ago. And I thought maybe the next step is telepathic conferences. I would love to see a little group of us looking into the next step of these things. I'm not sure how we're going to do that, but the focus for me into the future would be young researchers, and the theme would be how can community research, the results of that research, lead us to create a better world. And I think really, if we can theme our work around those two things, what can we learn from our successes and failures, and how can we create a better world out of that? That would be a legacy that I would love to see be carried on by ICSA. And if anybody want to look at telepathy, get in touch with me and we'll see what happens. Just send me a thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful. Back to the big circle. I can see there are some comments and also other people would like to share. So I will open the mic for you, Gren. You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Thaisa. Thank you, everybody. So what comes to mind for me is that web streaming is kind of par for the course these days. Yes, we've been doing it for the last few conferences. And at Fintorn, we do it as a matter of course for large events. And so that's fine for broadcasting paper presentations. In fact, all kinds of presentations from the main venue, in our case, the Universal Hall. So that's easy. What I think is more difficult is sharing the experience of being in the intentional community, whichever it is. So it just so happens that last night I was giving a presentation on conferences I've been involved in the past. And I included the ICSA conference in 2013 that I co-hosted with Jan. And what I included in that discussion was a quote from Bill Metcalf that he included in his report about the conference. And it focused mostly on not so much the papers, but on the experience of being at Fintorn. So there was a kind of a mini immersive experience, what we call Experience Week at the beginning, before the conference. And many scholars stayed on after the conference. But just because, you know, there's a very rich cultural and social life here in Fintorn, as probably most of you know. So there's plenty to get involved in. Not necessarily the organized activities, but the more casual interaction with members and sharing meals and so on. So that's my question, really. How do we share that aspect of the conference virtually with others? It's an open question. I have no answer myself. But while I've got the mic, I would like just to take a moment to acknowledge and to thank Bill Metcalf for his support for my work over the years. Bill was one of my two PhD supervisors. He's a long-standing colleague who's always been up for a discussion about papers. And he's a great friend and always prepared to offer me a bed when I go to Brisbane. So I'd just like to acknowledge and thank Bill, and I do hope he watches the recording to field that comment. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Graham. I see some hands. Steve was first. Then we'll continue. I know Anton also wants to bring some other reflections, and we will continue. So over to you, Steve, and then we continue with
thanks.
Deborah and the others.
Thanks, Asia. And I think one of the reasons why our virtual conferences have worked is because we got to know each other in the in-person conferences. So it wasn't a soulless person on the screen. With Deborah, I have to say one of my favorite moments is sitting at the bar cafe at Tamara with just a big group of us for hours on end, having the discussion. I think those relationships carry over to the virtual world. I also think that the in-person ones are important because as I get to hang out with students all the time, I see this sort of reactionary against the technology where they actually want to put their phones down. They feel mixed because they also want to get many likes, but they want to actually engage with people in person and remembering that. And then just one comment on the future of community and young people. If you study sort of Gen Z, which is the world that is at the university now, at least in America and Europe, they are the loneliest generation that has ever come across. There's a deep-seated loneliness, and that they're frustrated about this loneliness. And the second thing that marks them is they feel hopeless about being able to afford the single-family house that everybody at one time was uplifted as the goal for everybody. And I think this combination of lonely and needing affordable housing is a ripe environment for a new era of communal living. I think many scholars over the history of studying community have anticipated a great flowering and awakening of communal living, and it's never quite gone mainstream in that sense. But if there is a recipe for a new sort of movement, I can imagine it being loneliness and unaffordability brings people together, and particularly when I see a lot of developers looking at that being, hey, here's a way that we can provide affordable housing for people who want it and have community. So the communities might look different, but I can see this new evolution of community arising, and ICSA being the organization that studies that as it percolates throughout the world. So just a thought about the future community and ICSA there. Back to you, Tasia.
Thank you so much, Steve. That's very insightful. I will hand it over to Deborah, and we'll continue with the hands.
Okay. Yeah, I wrote down 4 points that I'll try to get through quickly. The first one is, I think for the sustainability of the ICSA, I actually think it would be a really good idea for us to track our average age. Because we don't want to die out. You know, we want to remain a healthy, vital organization. And I think tracking that is an important indicator that we should be paying attention to. And in the same vein, I think it would be great if we could figure out how to give grants to young scholars. I know we're already struggling financially, so this would be a challenge to build up a fund to be able to do that. But I know like the CSA, for example, on its membership renewal has a place where you can donate as you're renewing your membership specifically for the Starting Scholar grants. And so I just encourage us to maybe do something like that. Have auctions at conferences where we could raise money to put in a grant kitty for young scholars. I don't know. I think we need to brainstorm ways to do that. I also think it's really important not to get too focused on one age group that we ignore the value of intergenerational mixing. I know in my personal experience, one of the best things that ever happened to me was meeting Tim Miller. When I was fresh out of my PhD, he took me to my first communal studies conference. This was back in 1989, and we went up to a Hutterite colony in Yankton, South Dakota, and that was the beginning of my involvement in communal studies. And just that interaction was so valuable. Just like Graham was talking about his interaction with Bill Metcalf, I think we've probably all had mentors like that in our lives. And so I just hope we can continue to support that kind of intergenerational mixing, maybe the sort of the mentor-student relationships that can come out of our organization. And then finally, I just want to add that I think it's time for us to shake up our format of our conferences a little bit. And I'm talking here more probably about the in-person conferences, that I think that sage on the stage model is getting pretty old and tired. And I think if there's other ways we can learn to share information that might attract younger people and that would be fun and inspiring and interesting, would be a good thing for us to explore. So that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Deborah. I love your suggestions. Over to you, Daniel.
All right. Well, thank you, Thaisa, for facilitating. And there's a garbage truck outside, so forgive me if the dog starts barking. And I have two thoughts, kind of building on what Amy was saying, that I think most of us agree that we are living in a unique moment in human history, if not planetary history. And I think capitalism is imploding, and I do think that community provides a lot of the solutions, or at least the laboratories for the solutions that we need. And so I'm wondering if we might create like a subgroup of ICSA that is focused on where are the current and past communities relevant to what's happening politically, ecologically, socially around the world, and really kind of focusing on how can communities be a part of that positive change to the world we want. So that's one idea. Maybe it's a track or a subgroup, I'm not sure. And the other idea is to connect more explicitly with aligned organizations and networks. I know there has been an affiliation with the Utopian Society and some very informal associations with FIC and others. I now co-direct the FIC, and many of us are very involved in GEN. And I would love to see more regular collaboration and connections. Maybe there could be liaisons from each just to get together, maybe quarterly or something, and just to see like how might we support each other's work better? How might we look at where are the emerging capacities? How might we do more together than we could individually and separately as our networks? Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Dan, over to you.
Hi again, everyone. I see there are tons of hands, so I'll be really quick. Graham's comment about the importance of the face-to-face meal sharing dimension of conferences, even as we use new technologies to link ourselves more regularly across continents, made me think that we should really think about doing kind of multi-local conferences. These could be tricky to organize, but if we can pull it off, I think there would be a lot of value. So this would be a conference where groups of people meet face-to-face in several different locations at the same time, and then use the technology to connect with one another. So for example, we could have immersive communal experiences in the multiple venues, but then the actual panel presentations online with 5 or 6 different groups of people watching a screen together.
Regional hubs. Wonderful. Thank you, Dan. Anseo, and then Albert.
Yes, thank you, Thaisa. Yes, great points. So one of the points that I was going to touch upon had been also addressed by Daniel, and that was connecting to the comments by Amy and Steve about connecting lessons learned from maybe communities to what we can learn about democratization and governance. The experience of communities on sociocracy, for example, could be an interesting process that we can learn about from at different levels of organizations. And another thing that I was thinking about this also was social skills and loneliness that Steve talked about. Kids today spend a lot of time on digital platforms, and a lot of people are worried about their social skills. Do they have enough practice when they go out into higher education, into work life? Do they have the necessary skills to function? I mean, I'm an associate professor at the university, and we see that the students that we got right after COVID struggled more with anxiety and were quite very silent in classrooms than previous generations of students. So these communities where people learn how to relate to each other, how can we solve tensions, how can we come into agreement in safe environments, could give us lessons that we can learn in schools and universities and such. So that's one point. Another point was the research linkage that was also raised by previous speakers, and that is, how can we make what we research about in communities to outside these spheres of community. For example, at the EU level, now I see that the calls that they are working on talk about beyond GDP, beyond economic indicators. How can we be better resilient socially and so on? So if we can see ways of maybe setting up a consortium, let's say, that we aim towards these goals, maybe we can also bring in connection and hopefully resources to research on communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Amseyo. Thank you so much. Albert, so good to see you around. Welcome.
Nice to see you too. This dovetails nicely with what Amsale just said, which is, we are at a point now of a polycrisis. This is what Dan was alluding to. There are converging crises in the design of civilization. Let me just say also, Deborah, I was at the Yankton conference. So I thank you for reminding me of those lovely times. That's really a situation of cross-fertilization in so many ways. But communities are test models, right? So we're sort of imagining the future, but then walking the talk and surfacing what are the issues, what are the problems, what's wrong with our model. And I think that we have to think about what is the edge? What is the necessary direction that the world needs to go? And we have been connecting with other organizations like Utopian Studies, Permaculture, Transition Towns. But I think also we need to broaden that a little bit. And I think the edge is more out in the direction of, climate scientists, for instance. So I would look to what are the conferences. There's one this week right now in Exeter, the University of Exeter, on tipping points. And it would have been nice to have somebody from communal studies present a paper there. What are the positive tipping points? And then Stockholm Resilience Center or Potsdam, some of the other major think tanks are having conferences and inviting speakers. We could be presenting at places like that. Mm-hmm. There's also, I went to the UN COPs, the Conference of Parties. Tyson, I have been there, and Jen was welcome to those, and at the highest levels, Christina Figueres and Baroness Scotland and others at the highest levels were saying, "Oh, yes, that's it. We need to think more in terms of the social dynamics of what needs to happen in the way people live in relationship to civilization, in relationship to the planet. And we need to rethink civilization, not just in terms of the built environment, but in terms of the social interactions and how people react with each other." And so when we go to those conferences, that has an experience, I think, of letting them know that you can reduce your carbon footprint and it doesn't have to be painful. It can actually be better. We could have, we don't have to necessarily expend money or time really to have to go to all these different conferences. You can piggyback on the work of others and join in going to conferences. And really, I think that's the communal solution to the problem of traveling to conferences. which is to join with other organizations that are already at those places and to cross-fertilize that way. So that's my contribution.
Thank you so much, Albert. Anton, you're the next.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say that I talked before about being on the cutting edge digitally, and we've talked about artificial reality and telepathy and AI, and I want to share about my alternate reality. And then my alternate reality is that I first attend an ICSA conference in 2007. And for all those years, I suffer from imposter's syndrome. What does that mean? It means that basically I'm surrounded by lots of academics and professors that are unwilling to talk to me because I live in a commune, and I would say that I was unwashed in that alternate reality. But the actual reality is that I have been accepted with open arms into an organization that, at least in terms of its title, is about the research side and is about the academic side of looking at intentional communities. And I think for me, that's part of what's enabled me to be part of this organization for so long and be in a position and having a role in the organization, is because we quite successfully have that combination of researchers and practitioners. And I think that's something that we need to continue being aware of. And I know, when Deborah says that we need to maybe shake up the format of our conferences, I think we've tried to do that over the last few conferences, bring more workshops and bring more creative and bring more culture, and trying to change it from the professor that looks down at the paper and reads, for 15 minutes and then looks up and notices that everyone's there has fallen asleep. And I think what we've managed to do, and I'd like us to continue going in that direction, is to understand that the organization is made up of people that both live in community and that people that research communities, and there are also people that are both of those things at the same time. And I think that for me is something that's worth keeping and encouraging more and more. Again, the move to have conferences hosted by communities and not just inside a academic institution also enables us to experience community, even for those that are writing about community and researching community and not living it.
Thank you, Anton. Very good points. Friends, and then Iris, so we can wrap up.
What I want to say is some important observations from the Danish Eco-Village Network, which is in a deep crisis now. And what I think we are experiencing is that a distinction between, in Danish, we have two words for eco-village. We have something similar to eco-village, and then we have the word eco-society, which is supposedly it would be an ambition to be something bigger than a village. And I think that what we are doing is or what we should be doing was to be more interested in what kind of ambitions would it take to make community life more relevant for the society at large. Because as long as the most people think that community is where the personal relations are dominant, and then whatever conflicts you have, you deal with it on a personal relationship basis. But this is not relevant for a bigger society than 150 people or something like that. You need to have something like more abstract justice concepts, and where the relations will have to have the framework of a justice system. And this is interesting that we are now talking about governance in communities, because that's actually a term that more relates to something much bigger. But I would be very curious to see some research on what are the communities that are actually having ambitions to be full featured, as Gilman defined it once, and to be everything, even in a small scale, but with the potential to grow to something bigger, and also seeing which of the small communities that are actually failing because they are thinking too small. They are not even thinking the abstract problems that are happening even on small scale. So this distinction we have in Danish language, at least, between very small places and the bigger ones, I think that would be very interesting to have explored more.
Thank you for bringing your suggestions. Iris, you're the last one, so we can continue.
Yeah, thank you very much. These were wonderful, wonderful ideas and potential projects, I would say. Really, I hope we can take down this as minutes. And I wonder how we go on with this, because ICSA, I mean, we have no resources so far. So if you have any ideas, grants, yeah, Deborah, you had ideas, or we have a research project or anything that we start. So that would be, I think, a good idea. And the webinars are at least the first frame where we can discuss this. So please, I can just invite you again to offer a webinar with the topics that really, yeah, that you really like and that you are passionate about. And then we can find a frame to discuss this and maybe develop a project out of this, I think. Because online we can exchange much more on a regular base than waiting until the next conference in a year. Now it's just a year, you know. And so, yeah, I hope we stay in touch after all these exchange we had now today and 2 days ago, and elaborate further on this. So thank you very much. And also the ones who have positions at universities, maybe you have also students that you can bring together here with ICSA, because we freelancers like myself or Taisa also, we have free time, we can engage voluntarily to a certain degree, but still, yeah, we need your support as well from the universal structures where you are affiliated to. Thank you very much.
Good points. Yeah, I just want to thank all of you. I'm sure we could continue, and this was a very rich conversation. I'm taking notes. We are recording, so the team will come back to it and hopefully share more soon. I will now hand it over to Steve so you can, wrap up.
Yes, well, thank you, Tasia, for leading that very rich conversation, and I've taken notes, and I'm sure we'll get a set of notes coming out of it, because so many good ideas there. And so I want to end with just a couple of pitches. First, as you can see, one of the evolutions of ICSA is to become a broader and daily part of people's lives. So we've seen this through the webinars, through the monthly newsletters, and hopefully as we move forward to create those rich connections. And so as part of that evolution, we've switched to a yearly model of membership. And I can say Amy and I have just become the most recent members, as well as our community. The Lavra has become a communal member, but it's a great opportunity to keep ICSA going and alive and able to do many things. There's lots of different levels of membership. So if you are a student or living at a community or have fixed incomes, there's opportunities there. And on the flip side, if you really want to support ICSA, there are opportunities to become sponsors and to become foundational members of the International Communal Studies Association. So I see Anton put a link in there. If you haven't become a member, it's about the price of a cup of coffee a week. No, a month actually at this point. So really, there is very little reason to not become a member and become connected. So click on that as time goes on. And then second of all, just do one final share of the screen, because we do have our community, in-person conference about a year from now, the 9th through the 11th at Liebesgarten. And just a little bit of background on Liebesgarten. It was one of the pioneers in the eco-village movement, as I said, started 40 years ago. One of the first places that taught permaculture, one of the early pioneers and participants in the Gen Network. And they are excited to host us. We can have as many people as we want. It's a very affordable conference, as we'll see going through. There's lots of different accommodations options, and so I really encourage you to look at that call for papers. And why we call it the old call for papers, it's really just an opportunity to be a part of the conference in lots of different forms. There's storytelling, there is group panels, there is community discussions that you can submit. Anything that you could see as furthering our mission to understand communal studies, the communities of the world, and their implications for our future. So click on that. I think the due date is November 1st for that first round. So here we will wrap up this 40-year celebration in two parts. We've looked at the past, and now we look to the future with great hope and anticipation of everything coming. And so thank you, everybody, for being a part of the celebration. Thank you for all the insights and thoughts, and it's so lovely to see your faces. And so in a very ICSA way, good night to some of you, good day to some of you, and good morning to the rest of you. So enjoy today, and we look forward to seeing you virtually and in person.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
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 You
Can
will
a few
include the chat
hard
in
to
the
achieve?
access to the documents after this?
Yeah,